Good morning, everyone. I'm John Sweeting. I'm Senior Director of Registration Services, and I'm going to talk about a few issues concerning policy, current policy, that my staff finds to be either vague or contradictory to what we think that the community is really trying to achieve with those policies. So as you see here, policies that aren't working as expected. We do this based on customer feedback that we receive daily at the RSD help desk through calls, tickets, emails. And it's also, we also have some ideas for new policies that come in every once in a while, which we just feed over to the advisory council. For the ones that I'm going to talk about today, the community, you're the ones that have to actually decide what we need to do with them, how we need to change them or not change them, depending on what you feel you really want those policies to achieve. So the policies I'm going to review today are 410, dedicated IPv4 block to facilitate IPv6 deployment, as well as 4.5, the multiple discrete networks. And also 6581, your IPv6 initial assignment criteria. Okay, so 410 is the dedicated IPv4 block that we have set aside to facilitate IPv6 deployment. It reads in part that in order to receive an allocation or assignment under this policy, the applicant may not have received resources under this policy in the preceding 6 months. Another tidbit is you can only receive a /24 at a time. You can only qualify for a /24. 6 months later, if you're using 80% of that block for the purpose of IPv6, to assist in IPv6 deployment, you can apply and receive and be approved for an additional /24. That can happen every 6 months. Under multiple discrete networks, upon verification that the organization has shown evidence of deployment of the new discrete network site, the new network or works shall be allocated the minimum allocation size under section 4215. So the problem that we have here is if you are a multiple discrete network and you come in and get a /24 for a site to transition, to help with your transition to V6, if you have another multiple discrete site that you're deploying V6 at, you cannot receive, under current policy, you cannot receive another /24 to help deploy V6 at that site unless you wait 6 months. This is becoming more, we've had more questions about that. Even though we haven't actually encountered an MDN request for 410 spaces, because we've been asked the question, told that, and the answer has been that they can't apply for it. So my staff brought it to me and I said, oh, that doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound like the intent of the community would be to, you know, not, if somebody has a multiple discrete network that's been recognized and they have a need at those different multiple discrete networks to have a /24 for the deployment of V6. We've recognized as multiple discrete networks. We've recognized they may be announced as different upstreams. That it just didn't seem like it jived with me. That's really what the community would want, and that's how they would want us to treat that. So the questions that we have for you, the community, is should each autonomous network be reviewed separately under under multiple discrete networks? Does the 410 6-month requirement apply to the organization as a whole, or should we apply it to multiple discrete networks, the networks within the organization, rather than the organization as a whole? Today, absent community input on this, we're interpreting it to mean that we can only allow one /24 per 6 month per MDN to the organization. As I said, that's not exactly what the policy states today, but that's how we're interpreting it, and we really would like feedback to make sure that we are enforcing that policy as the community wishes it to be enforced. Our thinking is that we don't want to stand in the way of IPv6 deployment. So if somebody has a need, and we've already recognized they have that need for the multiple discrete networks, that we should allow them the block at each of those sites, the /24 at each of those sites to help them deploy. Kathy has a question already. I haven't even called for questions. Go ahead, Kathy.
Well, I can wait. If
No,
you-
that's okay. Let's do it.
I'm Kathy Aronson. If they have two different org IDs, can they get two different blocks under that policy?
Yes, absolutely.
Then I
Per-
would be under the opinion that if they have MDNs, they should be able to too, but anyway, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Chris?
Chris Woodfield, Salesforce ARIN AC. The multiple discrete networks, I have a history here because I worked for the company that got that that worked to get that into the policy. The target of that policy language was intended for organizations that run effectively BGP islands, so that I have AS number 1 over here, AS 2 over here, are completely separate. They could be treated as separate entities for the purpose of qualifying for V4 space. Just to add some background to that. So my impression is that given the ambiguity, you're following the correct policy.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Kevin?
Go back.
Go ahead, Kevin.
Okay, Kevin Bloomberg, The Wire. To me, these are two separate policies, and commingling them actually affects one of the inputs related to 4.10, which is that we're giving out last little bits to organizations that need a kickstart with V6. Without having statistics on the number of orgs with MDNs and the number of MDNs that they have under their portfolio, it seems like one org could use this as a way to jumpstart their entire network with V4 using V6, which is great, but deplete this pool significantly. I don't know what the largest number of MDN sites under one org is, but if each one is treated separately, it's a fairness issue. For me, 4.10 was meant to be for not small organizations, but for an organization to get a kickstart for V6 by getting V4. We're giving now 1,000. If you had I don't know if there's an MDN with 1,000, 64, 128, whatever it may be, times that. That doesn't seem quite right. I would expect that 4.10 should be an isolated policy and not pulling in things like MDN.
So you're stating just per organization, so we just make them get org IDs for each one of their discrete sites rather than keep it simple?
I think that there's a complexity with MDN that should not be intertwined into, and I would actually, like I said, without some real statistics on this, I'd rather see 4.10 left standalone and not apply things like MDN into 4.10, which would effectively mean one org ID would be allowed to get the space from there.
And we do have statistics on the size of the 410 pool.
Not the
It's like
410 pool, the MDN.
98%
How many orgs have MDNs and the number of MDNs that they have?
Okay, we can get that.
Thank you.
Back, Mike? I'm sorry, it's just hard to see. It's like
Mike-
the sun is out bright
Yeah.
here.
Michael Casadoval, Noraulo. Do we have current statistics on what is currently available in the 410 pool and projections towards exhaustion, since that, I think, would influence the policy decisions?
Yeah, I'm gonna give that in the RSD department update. I believe it's somewhere around 98% of that pool is still available.
All right, thank you.
Owen DeLong, ARIN Advisory Council. 98% of a /10 can go away very quickly if we start issuing additional /24s for MDNs, and people decide to use that liberally. I'll avoid the word abuse for now. I personally think that expanding 4.10 to MDN might not be such a bad thing if we use the policy proposal that is currently on the docket regarding 4.10. One of the side effects it has is capping the total amount issued to any one org at a /21. And I think once that safeguard is put in place, it's probably not so bad to allow orgs with MDNs to get multiple /24s based on their MDNs up to a total of a /21. I think allowing any org more than a /21 out of 410 is completely contrary to the intent of 410. Even if they have 1,000 MDN sites, I really wouldn't want to see that happen.
Yeah, so just
Thanks.
realize, as Kathy brought up, that these organizations could, instead of doing it under multiple discrete networks, they could just have a separate organization registered with a separate org ID with that, and get those ASs for those sites under that org ID and qualify. So just keep that in mind, because I think Kathy kind of hit it on the nail right on the head with that comment. Andrew?
Andrew Dahl, multiple discrete network guy, and ARIN AC. My thoughts about this are that when we did 410 originally, I don't think we considered this as a intertwinement, and we wanted 410 to stand on its own. So my interpretation of 410 is it should stand on its own today. And I would encourage people who would like to apply MDM type methodologies to 410 to make a comment on the existing draft policy that I authored to update 410 based on information that John Sweeting brought to us in the AC in January at our face-to-face meeting. So please make comments on the mailing list for the draft that's outstanding right now, and if you feel strongly about this, we can include this in that draft update. I don't have that policy number off the top of my head, but it is one of the drafts that we will be discussing today and tomorrow. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. And just a little bit, okay, go ahead, John, you go first. I was just going to say that the 3 queries we've had into this have been from organizations that had 2 multiple discrete networks.
Any other questions for Mr. Sweeting? No. Thank you, John.
I have another.
Yep, you have another one.
I have another one.
Round of applause for this one. He's not going anywhere because now he's going to give the internet number status report.
No, actually, I have another policy on this. The questions, yeah. All right, so this is on initial assignment criteria for IPv6. Organizations may justify an initial assignment by having a previously justified IPv4 end user assignment from ARIN or one of its predecessor registries. The problem we're having with this is that this policy was written prior to depletion. It doesn't really tell us how to interpret it in the case where an organization cannot qualify due to the depletion. Not that they can't qualify, that they can't qualify for the IPv6, but they can qualify for IPv4, but they can't get IPv4 because they have to go on the wait list. So the questions for the community is, can the current is the current practice correct? If so, it might be wise to formalize it in a policy, and if not, then guidance should be provided. And what we're doing today is that if they qualify for V4 and they're on the wait list or they're waiting for a transfer, then we say they qualify for V6. So, in other words, we can go with status quo. Qualifying for IPv4 qualifies you for IPv6, or are there other options? And if that is correct, then possibly it should get updated in policy to reflect that it's not just that they have V4, but that they qualify for V4. Owen?
Qualifying for V4 was one of many criteria by which you can qualify for V6. So, or having V4 rather, was one of multiple criteria by which you can qualify for V6. I think the other criteria by which you can qualify for V6 are perfectly adequate, and that, I'm fine with the staff interpreting qualifying for V4 qualifies you for V6, because I agree that, circumstances now were not envisioned at the time of writing of the V6 policy. I had some hand in writing the V6 policy, so I will admit that. But I do think that the other criteria are adequate to cover most initial circumstances where an organization doesn't have V4 or isn't getting V4. So I'm not sure policy work is really necessary here.
So you're saying to just the status quo and continue marching as we're marching? Fine. Thank you. Any other questions? If not, then as John said, I'm going to stay right here and go into the number resource statistics overview once we get it up.